And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Tonight's weather, we've got low pressure leaving the Bristol Bay area this evening and moving into the western Gulf of Alaska after midnight, and that'll spread rain up along the North Gulf Coast and areas of south central Alaska. Scattered showers in the central interior, dry to the north, dry for the Panhandle, dry for the eastern Bering Sea with light winds out through here. Some isolated showers here along the southwest coast. Next system pushing rain slowly eastward, and tomorrow that warm front will spread some light rain, fog, and drizzle in toward, from Atka eastward to Nikolsky with rain back toward Adak. Light winds, eastern Bering Sea into the Chukchi Sea, and this system drives rain into the southeast coast with some gusty winds along in advance of the front. Next day, that washes out to a trough there, so rain changing to showers and starting to scatter out nicely here from the North Gulf Coast, but still kind of a damp, cloudy, cool day over the southeast interior areas, and dry again over the interior of Alaska. Maybe some afternoon showers here just north of the mid-Yukon River area. Next system, wind and rain coming in toward the southwest coast, definitely for the Pribilof Islands. Wet conditions return to the Alaska Peninsula and eventually into Bristol Bay. Coastal water forecast there for the Panhandle. West to south winds, 15 to 25 knots. North coast here, we've got gale warnings for east to southeast winds, 35 knots. Seas 10 to 13 feet. Pretty brisk southerly winds in Lynn Canal with seas at about 4 feet. Southeast 20 knots with higher gusts for Stevens Passage, and variable to northwest winds 10 knots for Clarence Strait. Outlook for Monday, west winds 15 knots down here on the south coast, central coast south to southwest winds at 15 knots, and the north coast much lighter now than tomorrow. For Monday, south to southwest breeze at 10 knots, south 10 for Lynn Canal, Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, light southwest wind at 10 knots. Gale warnings out for Prince William Sound for Sunday. East winds 35 knots, seas 7 feet. Gale warnings also for the eastern North Gulf Coast in advance of that front. Southeast winds 35 to 40 knots, 10-foot seas. East at 15 for the western North Gulf Coast. Northwest 20 for the Barren Islands. North 20 for Kamishak Bay. Small craft advisories for Cook Inlet for Sunday. North winds 25 knots. Outlook for Monday. South to southwest breeze, 15 knots there for Cook Inlet. Really light variable wind conditions here for the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, Barren Islands, and Kamishak Bay, all in the forecast area of about 10 knots with slight seas. For Kodiak Island, Sunday, west winds 15 to 25 knots. Alaska Peninsula, west-southwest winds 15 to 25 knots. Southwest 25 for Bristol Bay with seas around 6 feet. And for the day Monday, Bristol Bay, southeast winds at 20 knots, seas down to 2 feet, and south to southwest winds 20 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, and variable to south winds at 10 to 15 knots around Kodiak Island. Eastern Aleutians, south to southwest winds 15 knots. Central Aleutians, southeast winds at 15 knots, and then south to southwest winds 20 to 25 knots from Amchitka Island out to Shimia. And for Monday, western Aleutians, west-northwest winds 20 to 25 knots. And small craft advisory, southwest winds here at 25 to 30 knots for the central Aleutians. Eastern Aleutians, south to southwest winds 25 knots with seas 6 to 9 feet. Southwest coast here, south of Nunivak Island, winds out of the west at 10 knots. Yukon Delta coast, northeast at 15. Northwest at 10 for Norton Sound. Light winds also for St. Lawrence Island out of the north at 10 knots. Light variable wind conditions for the Pribilof Islands. North breeze at 15 for St. Matthew Island. And then for the day on Monday here for the southwest coast, southwest winds 15 to 30 knots there with southeast winds at 10 knots for Norton Sound. St. Lawrence Island, same thing. South 25 for the Pribilof, seas up to 8 feet there, and east at 25 with 7-foot seas for St. Matthew Island. And for the Chukchi Sea tomorrow, we've got basically north winds here 10 to 15 knots, east at 15 for the central and western Arctic coast, east winds 20 knots for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And for Monday, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east-northeast at 15, east 15 to 20 knots for the central and western Arctic coast, and the Chukchi Sea Winds northeast to northwest at 5 to 10 knots.